Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Hello, welcome back, Podderoonies. We are finally back for 2023 with another set of podcasts for you to listen to for this year. It's all worked out, don't worry. We're not doing this off the cuff sometimes. Kicking things off this episode, as The Pale Blue Eye has hit Netflix today as we record. We'll be talking Gothic horror films. Yes, I did say in the previous podcast that it was going to be like period set horror films, but I was like, I think we need to change it because yes, this subject is a horror film. We're doing it on horror films, and The Pale Blue Eye doesn't really look like a horror film, but it's very gothic. It's got Edgar Allan Poe in the film as a character, the famous Gothic horror writer. So I thought, why not do Gothic horror films? I guess there's lots of different interpretations of what like Gothic is. For me, it's just like old-timey, whiny and dark, scary castles and very freaky monsters and ghosty type things. Very, very kind of like period set Victorian-y type style of film, I guess. And of course, I am joined by our very own Count. Boaz Dix, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm great.
Good. That was a stupid joke, sorry.
Yeah, it was terrible. So we're definitely back in business. We're back to form. Terrible jokes. You can count on that.
Yes, as always. Pale Blue Eye, what do you reckon of this one?
The Pale Blue Eye, I seriously have no idea what it's about. I've seen like one trailer, like a 5-minute cast talk that was in an yeah. But still, I don't know any information about this film, like really that much, other than the setting.
Yeah, so I think it's set in the past, and Christian Bale is like a detective, and there's an apparent suicide, but it turns out that it could be a murder, and he gets Harry Melling's character involved, who is like a soldier, but he is actually Edgar Allan Poe, the famous Gothic writer of The Pit and the Pendulum, The Fall of the House of Usher, and one of my picks. And my pick is The Masque of the Red Death. I thought it would be quite fitting to actually go for one of his adaptations for this subject. I've seen The Pit and the Pendulum and House of Usher with Vincent Price. Roger Corman and Vincent Price did a load of films together and a few Edgar Allan Poe adaptations. And he also did The Masque of the Red Death, which I hadn't seen. So I was very keen to watch this to see what it was like compared to the other two. Those were the kind of three that I was thinking about what I was choosing. So I just went for one that I hadn't seen before and kind of tick that off my horror list, as it were. I mean, this film's weird. It's really weird compared to the other two, which is Pit and the Pendulum and House of Usher. They're a bit more focused, I think, in the storytelling. This one is a bit weird and crazy because I think that, it's not really a book. This isn't based on a book. This is based on like a really short story. It's like 6 pages long.
Yeah. Like
the beginning and the end are only in the short story, and like most of the film in the middle is kind of made up, and Roger Corman and co are filling in a lot of the gaps here. So what happens in The Masque of the Red Death? Well, Vincent Price plays Prince Prospero, a European prince who terrorizes the local peasantry with using his castle as a refuge against the Red Death plague that stalks the land. And basically, nearly everyone dies. In quite arguably funny fashion, but yeah. So, what did you make of this one then, Bauhaus?
Yeah, I kind of liked it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of, cheese in it, and it's not maybe as tight and as focused as it could be. Yeah. But I don't know. I still kind of enjoyed it. It was weird.
Yeah, weird is the word.
But I think it's meant to be weird.
Yeah. Have you seen a Vincent Price film before, or is this your first Vincent Price experience?
I've seen what's that one? The Edgar Allan Poe. The heart under the floorboards thing. The tail heart.
Sure.
Yeah, so I saw him do that.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly aware he's pretty over the top and quite campy. So.
Yeah. The king of hammy, I would say.
Yeah.
But still quite, there's some brilliance to his acting in some ways, I guess. Some brilliant theatrical genius, I would say, in watching his work. So directing then, I think some of the directing from Roger Corman was a bit distracting with some of the push-in shots. They were very bumpy at times, and there's a big tracking shot in the castle where Vincent Price is addressing his subjects, and as the camera moves, the background is really thin at the edges, then widens out as the camera moves, and I guess it's because the lens was so spherical in those days. That was a little distracting, but that was just something that bothered me a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough.
The little scary moment with the woman dying of the Red Death was a little freaky, but nothing too shocking, I don't think. But the first real shock moment was when the little girl is dancing and knocks over Alfredo's drink. Then he slaps her to the ground, and you're like, "What the hell?" Then when you hear her speak, you're like, "What the fuck?" Burn her at the stake, kind of thing. Some of the dubbing is "Oh dear, no." There's a really grown, an adult actress voicing the little girl.
Yeah, I did find that
bizarre.
Quite, that pretty weird, and the dubbing was pretty bad on that. I was like, you've already got, a male short person. Why couldn't you get a female short person? That would have been more believable, right? Instead of a little girl. That confused me. The is it Juliana or whatever, when she was having her horror dream, I thought that lingered a bit long, where that was that was quite absurd. I mean, the whole thing is kind of absurd, but it went on a bit long, where you're like, yeah, this isn't scary, this is kind of fucking weird. I don't know, this is kind of funny.
I mean, I quite liked it to begin with, the way it was done, the frame kind of warping, and it's all kind of green and stuff. But I actually agree. It went on too long.
Yeah. I think this is one of the things that...
it's too indulgent.
I always find with, scary scenes or whatever, actually with a lot of things when we talk about them, but, sometimes, and I know it's a cliche saying, but sometimes less is more. Really leave some stuff to the imagination, or just
6 pages. This story, 6 pages.
yeah, because I kind of respect that whole adage of sometimes what you can come up with in your head can be a lot fucking more freaky than any kind of screenwriter could come up with. So I would have kind of cut that down a lot more.
Yeah. And when all those different people come and dance around her and kill her several times, I'm like, 1 or 2, fine, but there's 4 different characters that tit around for a while.
Yeah.
Before stabbing her.
Yeah, it was a bit weird.
Over and over again. It's okay, you're losing me here. It's becoming funny now.
Yeah. I really do like the presence of the character of the Red Death. And how it even starts with him, and he's just playing tarots in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I think they do him really well, where he is kind of unnerving and just there, and really kind of cryptic and quite creepy. Apart from towards the end, he's used pretty sparingly, and doesn't really go into motives and stuff. So I think he's a really interesting character. So I quite like whenever he shows up.
those scenes are certainly some of my favourite scenes for sure. Certainly from a writing perspective as well. I feel like he should have had a table though when he's doing the tarot cards. Just very, the cards are teetering on his knee a little bit. I'm like, give the guy a table. Come on,
Yeah, this is uncomfortable.
You're some sort of god. But it's interesting. I feel like they could have gone a bit further with like how like scary looking he could have been, because in the book, in the story, I shouldn't say book, it's the story. 6 pages. The Red Death character that turns up at the party in the story, it's described as he's just like dressed in burial robes, and not red ones, just like plain burial robes, but he's covered in blood. and when Prospero like takes off the mask, which is like a skeletal decaying mask, so it is pretty horrible, the description. And when he takes the mask off, like there's nothing there, it's just hollow.
That sounds a lot more horrifying, which is kind of crazy. I didn't know that. Yeah, I think they could have done that.
Yeah, there definitely could have been a way of doing that, but
that would have been pretty fucking scary.
Going back to Juliana's character, her death scene wasn't very good at all, I didn't think.
No, I don't think so.
It was kind of like a series of poses where she gets more and more blood poured on her each time in each cut, then falls to the ground like she just remembered she has to die now. You know, not great.
Yeah, so I don't think like the acting of that or how most of that was cut together was that terrifying. I mean, I think like, you know, the birds do bird attack. Alfred Hitchcock's The Bird. They do bird attacks much better than that.
Oh yeah.
However, one thing I did like was the sound of getting the when her body is discovered by the other woman that runs in there, how the screech of the bird sort of morphs into her screeching. I quite like that. I thought that's a pretty good idea in an otherwise lackluster attempt at at a bird mauling.
But I think my favorite shot or scene would be where Prospero like punishes Francesca's father and lover for trying to escape, and Prospero had like 5 daggers in the table, and one is laced with poison, you know, that will kill them in 5 seconds. And then in turn, they have to like cut their forearm. And it, you know, as it plays out, it's the first scene for me where there's genuine tension, you know, not massive amounts, I wouldn't say, but it was quite a creative way to kill a character. You know, at the end, it has to be, you know, the poison dagger. So you're like, okay, he's going to die. I thought he was going to kill himself by cutting the last knife with poison. So I quite like the fact that he tried to kill Vincent Price in vain. Yeah, I think that was my favorite, I think. Just for pure, like, suspense, I guess.
You know, I quite like even just the whole last scene, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about that where, you know, the Red Death is playing tarots with a kid and just laughing it up. He has, like, other diseases that greet him, and then they walk off sullenly into the night.
It's very nice and simple. Boaz, what's your directing score for The Masque of the Red Death?
I think maybe I'd give it oh man, this is difficult. Maybe like a 6.7.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I think that's probably quite fair to me. Yeah, I think, you know, certainly these aren't exactly expensive horror films, and I would say like The Pit and the Pendulum and House of Usher, the other two that I've seen, are better than this one. Not by like a massive amount, but I think certainly this film is all about Vincent Price and the writing here for me, not really the directing. I mean, I love how colourful this film is as well. Yeah. Like the 3 rooms that they go through, was it white, purple and yellow, and then the black room where they kind of worship Satan with the red window. That was great. Even down to like the costume design. Yes, I guess you could argue it's a bit pantomime-y, a bit theatre-y, but I still quite like some of that stuff. And also we should say Nicholas Roeg shot this film as the cinematographer who did Don't Look Now. So I think he was very much a big influence on that dream sequence, the warpy green dream sequence. I mean, it did look amazing. It just went on for too long.
It did look really good. Yeah.
So I would go like I don't know, a solid 7, I guess, for me.
Cool.
Screenplay, then. I think this screenplay is kind of really interesting for me. Like, the film explores the ideas of what's more terrifying, like being at the mercy of a devil worshipper or being at the mercy of the Red Death outside the walls, basically the plague in Poe's time. And I think he was very much influenced by the fact that in Poe's life, like his mother and I think his sister, died of the bubonic plague. So he kind of had first-hand experience of what that was like. And whether your own faith can help you survive or not, be it the devil or a god for good. So I love the last reveal during like the dance where everyone is covered in blood and Prospero takes off the mask and the red cloaked guy, the Red Death, and he looks just like Prospero, Vincent Price. But I love the line just before the reveal, like Red Death says to Prospero, each man creates his own god for himself, his own heaven, his own hell. And it's like Prospero has unwittingly summoned his own personal Satan, not to worship, but that will actually kill him. Death has judged Prospero in his most feared image, the Red Death, this disease that looks like himself. If there is a god in this, it's death itself. That's my theory anyway. But I do like the ambiguity of the story, I guess. All the filled in elements of this story, that what's going on is not completely spelled out for you. So, I do like all these kind of themes clashing against each other.
Yeah. Well, I think even, I think the characters are pretty well rounded, even for such a short time frame. Like Prospero, when he's introduced, he's a complete twat and just like nothing nice about him. He burns a village down. He wants to kill, whatever. Is it Francesca's father
and lover?
Yeah, father and lover. So like he's a piece of shit and he wants them to duel. So he seems like a bastard, but at the same time, like the way he sort of talks to Francesca and it's like he likes her. And he likes her innocence and that way that she thinks. And he always tries to sort of justify his heinous actions. And I think that kind of gives him a sort of, I wouldn't say like direct sympathy, but there's something else to him. He's not quite as evil as he's making himself out to be. And then I also like with Francesca how she's basically getting more and more seduced by the dark side. So she isn't completely pure. She is thinking it over and thinking, even towards the end, she's like, I don't really care anymore. Yeah. She's like, my life is gone from me. Whatever.
Fuck it. Everyone's dying.
Yeah. And she's like, I'll go to the Black Room. I'll serve and all this stuff. So you're like, okay, that's pretty. And like, so you think, okay, that, she's kind of being seduced by the dark side. Her lover as well, and her father. It seems like he was getting really into the violence in the training and stuff. And I think Prospero even tries to guilt trip him, like, you killed 3 people, So, like, I made you break your own moral code. Like, what the fuck, man? So I do think a lot of the characters have, like, even, like, the horrible ones, like, they try and sprinkle, like, some sort of explanation for them or whatever. They try and say something to ingratiate themselves with you. So I think even what was it, the dwarf? And I didn't know what was going on there throughout that whole thing, and then it turned out it was like revenge. You struck my lover, revenge, and I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty interesting. And then even when you say like the Red Death is kind of the hero, like he gets them all to escape, but you're like, and even that they have him like playing taros with a little girl, you still think he's killed thousands of people. Yeah. Just willy-nilly, probably, thousands and thousands of children. This thing is fucking... This isn't a good thing, just because he killed the bad guy. I kind of like the writing where, I think the whole concept of good and evil is, like, put to the test. Like,
yeah,
some of these guys are not 100% evil, even though they're pretty damn bad, and some of the good guys are not 100% good.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a well-rounded story and with the characters. And
I think it does a pretty good job with the lines that they give them, where you do start to sort of question their moral compass. So I did like that.
Oh, and it kind of explores this idea as well of like, I think what Poe is trying to get at is like, is there like some sort of other godly force that's not like Satan or Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
To do with like all this mass death from a disease.
Absolutely.
Is like, how the hell can God accept all this death kind of thing in that time period?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was it? Even like Prospero, he takes the piss out of Jesus and God and stuff and the Christian religion, because he's like, well, why does your God allow even the good to die? I'm going to serve Satan. He's going to spare me. And then he gets through all of this, doing all this wicked shit and wanting to communicate with the devil. And he thinks he's communicated with him and that his emissary is the Red Death. But he's like, dude, I'm not sent here by the devil. I'm come to kill you, And he's like, what? Even he's like, what the hell,
I'm supposed to be untouchable. What's going on?
I'm meant to be untouchable. Like, I used to serve God. He was obviously, he doesn't care. Now I'm serving the devil, but it's even out of his hands. So I think it's more this idea that death is really random, because even when all the diseases are talking, they're like, oh, I killed 100,000, 10,000. And he's like, I've killed all but 6, and I've killed the guilty, I've killed the innocent, I've killed all kinds of people, but I've left these 6. Yeah. It's like, you know what I mean?
I do wonder which one's COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it might be a slight dig at what human beings do to maintain, to not die, like these systems that we create to sort of keep us alive, and it's futile. So it doesn't matter, because I think Prospero, he's like this rich, as opposed to the peasants who serve God, he serves the devil. As opposed to the peasants who are poor, he's rich, and he could afford this keep to keep out the disease. But it doesn't matter, death comes for everyone. It doesn't fucking matter. You could be as rich, you can build the walls, you can build a government, you can believe whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. You will die. And I think it's unfair, but it seems to be true. So it's kind of funny how he takes the piss of them clinging to God, but he's clinging to riches, status, and the devil, thinking that'll save him. It's like, nothing fucking saves you. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is really interesting, the fact that this film is kind of like infused through a religious angle in like a medieval period, because this film wouldn't really work like set in the modern day. It would just be like an epidemic film, like a Contagion or whatever.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work at all. So it's just really interesting how these medieval characters combat this situation through religion and what their beliefs are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you could do it in the modern day. I don't think it really is done.
Well, with cultists.
Not cultists. I mean, Jesus Christ, the 2/3 of the human population, probably more than that, believes in some sort of deity. And, even if you talk about, I even think you can wind this up and not make it government conspiracy or humans turning on one another. I think you could do it because one, there's a lot of religious people. There's still a lot of superstitious people, but even you say people that cling to scientific, beliefs, even though I believe these things are true, like, you still think, oh, it's going to save me. Oh, it's going to protect me. Yeah. So again, you can do that. It's just the general idea. It can be faith in everything. In this, it's just like, it doesn't matter what you believe, what your faith is religiously, you can't escape death. But it's the same at any point in any period of history. We still cling to some sort of beliefs that we think will keep us safe. This is, I think, a human thing. We're definitely afraid of death. And even though we mock other people's beliefs, we'll still have a belief that will keep us safe. We're not going to die. Yeah. We're going to be kept safe. So I think you can absolutely do this in any period and just talk about, like, you could just attack every ideology. You could say, what this guy is doing, what this guy believes, what this guy is building, that's not going to save him. This guy's going to die. Just have it random and just have, a couple of random people that survive. I think you could absolutely do that. People still believe in things. I don't think we should just imagine just because, we have computers and cars and shit that everybody is like some sort of rational, non-emotion filled, not afraid of death, machine. Like, no, people believe in superstition. That'll never go away, I don't think, as long as we're afraid of death.
There's always going to be stupid people.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you can absolutely do this in
Yeah.
the Monday. But I think it
Fair
makes
enough.
more sense in the old timey days because you would go, oh, well, that's them. Oh yeah, I knew they were superstitious. But I think you could absolutely. I think it might be even
Yeah.
more effective if you did a retelling in the modern
Yeah.
day and really attacked people's core beliefs. That no, it's not a belief in God and Satan that won't save you. It's like a belief in anything. You are going to die. You're going to fucking die, every single one of you, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Yeah. But I feel like you can still have like all the different kind of diseases dressed up in that costume kind of thing in a modern day setting as well. I thought that could be kind of cool.
Yeah,
maybe
kind of freaky as well. Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't sure about some of the subplots in this film with like Juliana, Prospero's wife, like losing herself to the devil, and the little guy and the Alfredo plotting to take out Prospero, but the little guy ends up betraying Alfredo by burning him alive for what he did to his really weird wife. But I wasn't really
Who is obviously a child.
Yeah.
She is obviously a child with a grown-up woman's voice.
But I wasn't really sure why these storylines were important until like Prospero like says to Francesca after seeing Alfredo burn alive, he says, as we kind of talked about a little bit, I say, you no longer turn away from the cruelties of life. And Francesca says, I no longer care. My life is done. What's left I give to you tonight. So, it's like Francesca has kind of lost her faith in her God. It's completely gone. And now she's completely desensitized to cruelty and terror now from what Prospero is doing. Prospero thinks she's converted her to believe in him and Satan, but in fact, she just doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess a lot of the storylines do kind of tie up a little bit. It could have been a bit more focused for me in that regard.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that.
It just seems like they committed a lot of time with like the short guy and Alfredo about the betrayal and plotting to just for this small moment for Francesca seeing Alfredo burning alive and her not caring anymore. I just feel like that's a lot of screen time to make that point. But
yeah, fair enough. I think it's also probably just to pad it.
Yeah, that's my least favorite part of the story. That those two, the short guy and Alfredo. But
yeah, I think I was like you. I was very confused as to where it was going.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe I would have even preferred like an attempted coup against Prospero, but he's already worked it out. I don't know.
Well, they try and the father and lover try and escape.
Yeah,
and fail miserably. Our favorite lines. I think there's some really, really great lines here for me in this film. Most of them all spoken from Vincent Price.
Yeah.
Who is amazing in his line delivery. Tell the people the day of deliverance is at hand.
Yeah.
You do little but eat and swill and dream of other things. How like a pig you are. Be one.
I actually thought that was kind of hilarious. That they're so like his people. They'll do anything that he can make these lords and ladies go around pretending to be animals. Yeah. I like where he's like, you laugh like an ass. Be one. And he's like, ride that ass to the market. That was quite funny.
For the uninvited, there is much to fear. There is no face of death until the moment of your own death. From the Red Death. Why should you be afraid to die? Your soul has been dead for a long time. I think for me, my favourite is after Juliana dies, Vincent Price says to his people, like, I beg of you, don't mourn for Juliana. We should celebrate. She has just married a friend of mine.
Yeah,
I love that line. It's so funny. So great. You got a favourite then?
Where the other guy is speaking about the anatomy of terror, and he's like, terror? What would you know about terror, Alfredo? Your senses are much too blunt. What is terror? Come, listen. Silence, listen. Is it to awaken and hear the passing of time, or is it the failing beat of your own heart, or the footsteps of someone who just a moment before was in your room? But let us not dwell on terror. The knowledge of terror is vouchsafed only to a precious few.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and then he's like, yeah, everybody celebrate and stuff. It's like,
act like animals.
Yeah. So I quite like that one.
Yeah, screenplay score, Bowers, what are you going for?
Yeah, I quite like the screenplay. I think it's very poetic and theatrical. I think there's some pretty good lines said, especially by Vincent Price, which are pretty memorable. And yeah, so I don't know. I'd go maybe in the eights, I suppose. Maybe like 8.6.
Okay, that's quite high. Yeah, I really like the script as well. I think it's all about the script and Vincent Price for me in this film. There's so many great, like, creative lines. I love a lot of them from Vincent Price himself. As I said, this is a story based on like 6 pages, basically the beginning and the end. So I think a lot of the storylines could have been slightly more focused. I kind of just loved, like, as we kind of said, like, a lot of the themes clashing against each other with the Red Death and Vincent Price's character and Francesca's beliefs and all that being deteriorated by what's happening in a very religious heavy time. So I really, really enjoyed that kind of side of it, and just like the dialogue between all the different deaths was kind of great as well. So yeah, I'll probably go like a solid 8. 8.2.
Cool.
So acting then, there's some really bizarre acting moments in this film where, like, Prince Prospero is like leading Francesca around his court to all these people, basically insulting them and then making everyone act like all these different animals, like a pig or a jackass. They're all like willing to do it as well. There's no like pushback at all from them. He's like, yeah, right, I'll act like a pig. What? What? Okay, fine. I don't know. They had cocaine in those days. But okay. I guess it shows, Prospero's power over everyone, but it does look really weird and a little bit silly at times, especially when everyone starts acting like, right at the end of the scene when literally everyone starts acting like animals.
Yeah, all at the same time.
It's quite bizarre.
Yeah.
I quite liked the acting from Hazel Court, who plays Vincent Price's wife, Juliana. There's like a scene where she basically is proposing to Satan, and she brands her chest with like a hot iron shaped as like an upside down cross. Afterwards, it's like she really is enjoying it a little too much. Like, she's having a little orgasm here, but it's all like in her eyes. I do quite like the acting in that moment from her.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
But very, very subtle in a very unsubtle film. I think I'll be saying that a lot in this podcast. The last scene with Vincent Price. I mean, Vincent Price is great. I do love the guy, but sometimes it just goes way too far. And when everyone is covered in blood, like dancing around him, it was just hammy as hell from Vincent Price.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In his Arab costume.
He's like, oh yeah, like swaying, doing all these poses. It was quite weird. It's like this is not how someone would react if the dead got up, covered in blood, and started dancing around you. You wouldn't be like, whoa, You're doing some sort of like Prince, music video.
It just looked really silly.
Yeah, it did look bizarre.
But I loved like the stillness of Vincent Price as the Red Death. That stare he has with himself is quite chilling to watch, actually, in those last moments. I thought that was great, actually. It's all in the eyes in that moment. Any other acting moments you like, Boaz?
What was it? I like some of the stuff with her lover. I think he was pretty cool.
Okay.
So I actually like when he started talking back, even at the start, with Prospero. Yeah. Like, I don't know, there's a sense of...
In the village.
Yeah, in the village. Like, there's just a kind of, like, a courage in the face of certain death that he's kind of got, where you're like, he speaks out or shouts out, but it feels like he knows, like, he could say something a bit too far and fucking die. So he's a little scared, but it's like that courage mixed with fear thing that he seems to do, I think, quite well. So I liked any scene where he's, like, standing up to Prospero or the guards, or especially, like, even the other villagers of just like, what the fuck are you doing, And they're like, well, we could die. It's like, well, yeah, I suppose, but, like, he could kill you as well. Like, he's an evil bastard, So I don't know. I quite liked him as well. I thought he was pretty interesting. But yeah, and I also like where like Francesca is. I think we've said this before, but where she's like deflated and sort of defeated, because that's very different from how she acts in the rest of the film.
Yeah, Jane Asher,
where she's like annoyingly optimistic.
Yeah.
Just like really irritatingly optimistic. Like, I get it.
So what you're saying, it's quite satisfying to watch that she's just broken
Yeah.
broken down. Oh, that's more realistic. There you go.
Yeah, because each time it's like, you can't do that. It's against this. It's you've got to save my father, and this is evil and stuff. You're like, shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. If Prospero didn't like her, I think anybody else would have slit her throat. But yeah, and then so I kind of like where she was quite.
It's like, please shut up! Everyone's dying. Look around you, woman.
So when she's defeated and like she's speaking in a very sort of, oh man, I'm over this.
Everyone's gone crazy. That guy's acting like a pig.
Yeah,
Come on.
So I quite like that. I thought that hit hard. Where I'm like, oh, where's this optimism gone? It's completely gone.
Yeah. A favorite performance, Boaz? Who are you going for?
I think I might go Vincent Price.
Yeah, that's the same for me. It's definitely the Vincent Price show in basically all of his films. Yeah, I do love a bit of Vincent Price in a movie. Acting score, Bowers, what are you going for?
Oh, man. I think I might go like I'm going to go 7.8.
7.8?
Yeah.
Jesus, that's high, in my opinion.
All right, I'll go 7.5.
Yeah, some of the acting is not great at all. Like from a lot of the other cast, they're not amazing.
Oh no,
to be honest.
Oh god, no. Yeah.
It's hammy as hell.
Yeah,
but, like a lot of, as we've kind of said, that Vincent Price, his line delivery is really good at times, and when he is in the Red Death costume for a few occasions, he's really great. Yeah, but some of it is just way too over the top.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff in the beginning, he's great. But he's like the only one that's good.
I will kind of agree with that. Like most of the other characters who I haven't mentioned in the acting are pretty bad. So the other guy that's trying to like do this coup against him, he's there, I suppose, and
he's there.
Yeah, and the dwarf and a bunch of the other people as well. They're not great actors, and a lot of the extras and stuff. And
the dubbing for the little girl is just weird.
Yeah, the dubbing is pretty goddamn bad.
So I'll probably go like a 6.7. I think
that's actually a lot more fair. I'll go. I'm going to change my mind.
Oh, okay.
I'll go a 6.9.
Right, let's add up the scores then for The Masque of the Red Death. The Masque of the Red Death gets 44.1. Yeah, I don't think it's going to make our top 10 at the end of the year. No way. But yeah, I still quite like it, certainly for the writing.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.